American voters are stuck with the rematch that few of us, wanted. Hi there, everyone. It's Jeff, and I am sorry to announce that the 2024 American presidential election is going to be a rematch between Donald J. Trump and Joseph R. Biden. This is not what most people wanted, but this is what we got. That will be the story we talk about on today's Plain English. As you know, this is the best podcast for you to upgrade your skills in English. We pick a topic in the news or just something interesting to me, and we talk about it together in English. The speed of the audio is just right for you. And then in the second half of the lesson, we talk about an English expression. Not just any English expression, we always pick one that came from the main story. That's how you know the expressions you learn here are authentic, because I only teach you the expressions that I personally use. Now, you'll never hear me teach you "It's raining cats and dogs." And you'll never hear me teach you "I'm over the moon," because I don't use expressions like that. I only teach you the ones you should be using in daily life. Now, this is lesson 662 of Plain English, and today's expression is pass the torch. JR, the producer, has uploaded the full lesson content to plainenglish.com/662. That's where you find the full transcript and a bunch of other goodies. plainenglish.com/662. Let's get started. 3 years ago, the prospect of a rematch election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden seemed remote, if not impossible. Shortly after losing the 2020 election, but before relinquishing power, Trump had pressured state election officials to find enough votes for him to win. When that didn't work, he pressured his vice president to declare him the winner during the official vote certification. And when that didn't work, he whipped a mob into a frenzy. The mob then stormed the Capitol building. By the end of the day, 174 police officers had been injured and one was dead. Trump, having incited the mob, later appeared paralyzed and indecisive when the protest got out of control. When Trump finally left office a few weeks later, it seemed his career in politics was over. Biden, meanwhile, took office at age 78. He had been a compromise candidate from the start. His main message was, "I can beat Trump and things will get back to normal." Many people assumed he would serve for only one term, that his would be a caretaker presidency, that he would be a bridge to a new generation of Democrats. But that isn't what happened. Biden never showed any sign of wanting to pass the torch. and he announced his campaign for re-election in April last year. A sitting president doesn't automatically get to run for re-election. He has to win the party's nomination first. But it's rare for anyone to challenge a sitting president in the primary elections. This year, one relatively unknown congressman did challenge Biden, but he didn't win many votes and he quickly dropped out. The talented younger Democrats, the state governors, the cabinet secretaries, none of them challenged Biden. On the Republican side, Trump has spent the years since his election loss denying that he lost at all. He called the election rigged and blamed a range of local, state, and federal officials for it. He found a receptive audience for that message. 2/3 of Republican voters believe the 2020 election was stolen from Trump and that Biden was not the true winner. Donald Trump remains a magnetic campaigner and a very, very popular politician. Even people who don't love him will vote for him out of economic self-interest. Many voters look back at Trump's term and they remember a time of prosperity and low inflation. 12 candidates challenged Trump in the Republican primary election. Of them, perhaps 3 or 4 had any chance to win, but Trump knocked them down one by one. None of them found a way to criticize Trump without alienating his many, many fierce supporters. So that is how we got here. But this is not the choice many voters wanted. More than 50% of voters say they didn't want Trump to run again. More than 50% of voters say they didn't want Biden to run again. So this will be a strange election. It is the first time since 1912 that a former president is running for office, having once been defeated. Both candidates have the advantages of incumbency. They both have strong name recognition and a record of accomplishments to run on. Both candidates also have high negative ratings. Overwhelming majorities say Biden is too old to serve a second term. Depending on the poll, about half of voters say they could never vote for Trump no matter what. Almost a fifth of Americans said they wouldn't vote at all if the nominees were Trump and Biden again. That is what they say anyway, but voters are only now starting to wake up to the fact that this rematch is happening. This is not a nightmare. They are going to have to either choose or live with the consequences of not voting. I will be voting, but I am in the majority that didn't want this rematch. It has now been 12 years since I really liked a presidential candidate. It's depressing, but it hasn't always been this way. In 2004, I volunteered for a campaign. I made phone calls, I licked envelopes, I passed out flyers, I knocked on doors, I carried a clipboard. I did all the things you imagine campaign volunteers doing. I went to an election night party. But I can't fathom doing something like that today. I'll do my part, and I'll make a choice, and I'll vote. But neither side could motivate me to volunteer. Not this year. Pass the torch. This is an idiom. First of all, a torch. A torch is like a huge candle. Better yet, it's like a huge butane lighter. When the Olympic flame is lit, and when athletes carry the flame to the host nation, they carry it on a torch. So to pass the torch is like what Olympic promoters do. They carry the torch all around the host country. Promoters, former athletes, they carry the torch in stages. And when one person is done carrying it, that person passes the torch to the next person, who carries it for a while and passes the torch to another person, and so on. That is the basis for this expression, to pass the torch. It means to transfer responsibility, power, or leadership to the next person. When we use the expression like this as a metaphor, it often means an older generation is transferring something to a younger generation. And pass the torch is a peaceful, planned, deliberate process of giving responsibility and leadership to the next person in line or the next generation. It's not sudden, unexpected, or turbulent. When Joe Biden won the American presidency in 2020, many people thought he would serve only one 4-year term. He was already 78 after all, the oldest person ever to assume office. Many voters thought he would get the executive branch back to some semblance of normalcy after a chaotic Trump presidency, and then he would pass the torch to a new generation of Democrats. Who could he pass the torch to? There are options. Kamala Harris, the vice president, is 59. J.B. Pritzker, governor of the state of Illinois, is 59. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, is 52. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, 56. So many people assumed that one of these younger Democrats, one of the 4 I mentioned, or someone else, they thought someone else would win a primary election and there would be a peaceful, deliberate, controlled transfer of responsibility, transfer of leadership from Biden to one of them. They thought Biden would pass the torch after one term, and then the Democratic Party would have someone younger than 80 leading it. That was what some people thought. But Biden himself had other thoughts. At no point during his term in office did Biden show any sign of wanting to pass the torch to anyone else. He didn't want that to be his legacy, beating Trump and then passing the torch. So he filed the paperwork for re-election in 2023, and now the 2024 race is a rematch of the 2020 race. Remember I said peaceful, controlled, planned transfer of responsibility. So here's one time you would never say pass the torch. When one political party takes control from another. It's not planned, controlled, peaceful, deliberate. It's a shock to the losing party. There are hard feelings. Maybe they don't exactly cooperate, etc. So that is not a time to use the expression pass the torch. So that's politics. Here's one from business. Steve Jobs was the CEO of Apple. He drove innovations like the iPod and the iPhone, even the original Macintosh computer. He died young at age 56. He worked at Apple until just months before his death. But he knew the end was coming, and he passed the torch to Tim Cook, who has been the CEO ever since. There was no fierce competition. This was planned well in advance. It was also executed very well. Tim Cook took over. He learned from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs gave control of the company to the next leader in line. He passed the torch. This happens in sports. In American football, the quarterback is the most important player on the team. He's the leader of the offense, usually the leader of the whole team. And because of the way the sport works, quarterbacks don't change teams a lot. They sometimes do, but often a good quarterback will be with the same team for a long time. So when a team has a really good quarterback, and when that quarterback is getting older, the team will draft a young, promising quarterback to take his place. But that young player won't really play in the games in his first year. He'll be a backup. He'll just practice. Maybe he'll play a few snaps at the end of a blowout win or loss. But the idea is that the older, veteran, really good quarterback will pass the torch to the younger one. This isn't like the old one leaves and the new one shows up. There is a transition. Brett Favre is one of the famous ones with the Green Bay Packers. He had a legendary career. He passed the torch to Aaron Rodgers. He had a legendary career, and he passed the torch to the current quarterback, Jordan Love, who's off to a good start. Each time, there was an overlap of a couple of years. They took advantage of those years, and they learned how to pass the torch. And that is all for us here at Plain English. Hey, if you liked learning this expression, and if you want to explore the other great expressions we've talked about in Plain English history, then there is a new place you can do that. And that place is plainenglish.com/expressions. I'll link to it in the transcript. Now, if you're a member, free or otherwise, you can find this page by going to the Learn menu at the top of plainenglish.com and then choose Expressions. And on that page, you'll see a list from A to Z of all the expressions we've talked about in previous lessons. They're in alphabetical order, one right after another, all on a single page. plainenglish.com/expressions. And remember, the best way to get there is to be a member, and you'll always have that link. There's a free membership too, so there's no excuse not to sign up. All right, coming up on Thursday, something very special, something I know you use, has just turned 20 years old. I know you use it, but you have to come back on Thursday to learn what it is. See you then.